Today I am talking to you about auctions and what to look for in your property before you go to the auction and bid on anything. So welcome back to the Bear YouTube channel. As I said, today we are talking about auctions. What I would love for you to do before I start is give us a like, give the video a like, give us a follow, and then you will be notified of our next videos. So I hope that you're finding them useful. If there is any feedback, if you've got any other topics that you'd like us to cover, then please do let us know in the comments. So auctions, let's talk about auctions. So what do you need to do before you turn up at that auction and bid on a property? It's really key to understand that on the day of the auction, you will be required to put 10% of your well-earned money down for exchange of that property, and then you will have a short period of time in order to complete on the purchase. So that money that you're putting down as the part of the exchange is non-refundable. You are legally obliged to buy the property or you lose out on that 10% deposit. So it's really important that all the research that you do for that purchase is done before you commit to buying the property on the day. So what people normally do when they haven't got a lot of experience in doing these sorts of things is look at kind of the physical aspects of that house or flat or shop, whatever it is that you're looking to buy. So what does it look like? Are there any physical problems with the property? So that could be like structural issues, there could be damp, there could be anything wrong with that. Could have fire damage, ceilings falling down. Like there's loads of things that you can see that's like wrong with that property and could present an issue. Generally these things don't cause a problem. I have had structural issues cause a problem. That's kind of the exception to the rule, but anything else, as long as it's fully costed and you've got the experience to be able to deal with it and the valuer agrees with all the numbers that you've got, then it's generally not a problem if the things that you need to do are fixable and they will be resolved as part of the refurbishment process. Where people tend to fall down is around the legal aspects of ownership or something to do with the legal aspect of that house, of that property. So where do you need to go to find the information to find out whether there is going to be a problem with your purchase? The answer is the legal pack. It is absolutely key to read through all that legal pack, find out what's there. Sometimes you will be more limited than others. If something's not there, then I think it's fair to assume that it doesn't exist. So if there is very few items or documents on that legal pack, then there's usually a reason for that. So either the vendor isn't able to produce those documents or there is a problem and they don't want to produce the documents. So let's run through a few things that you can check that are usually on the legal pack. So the first thing to check is the office copies or the land registry title documents. If you have got copies of we call them office copies, which is a downloaded document that shows you the ownership and any charges that are on that property. If that's not there, then that would suggest that this is what's called a first registration. So it's not changed hands since the early 1980s, and that first registration will have to happen as part of your purchase, which isn't necessarily a problem. The only time that it could be is if we haven't got access to those original documents. So we've had a case recently where it was the client was buying the freehold. There had been a leasehold in place, but that had expired. We had all the evidence of the expired leasehold. We didn't have any evidence of the freehold. We didn't have any evidence that the current owner was in fact the owner. So that is a big problem. Generally, you will have those documents and you would like to think that they would be available, and if they're available, they would normally be uploaded as part of that legal pack. So you can have a look at that, and I would suggest asking a solicitor to have a look at that. That there would normally be a charge for that, but I think it's a good thing to pay for. It will potentially save you a lot of money later on down the line. So yeah, have a look at the office copies. You can see who owns the property. If it's a company, absolutely have a look at them on Companies House, see what the situation is. What is the reason for the sale? That would be a good way to find out. What charges are on there? Have a look for any other restrictions or any charges like unilateral notices, any restrictions or covenants that are in place that could not necessarily stop you from purchasing the property, but it may mean that we have some issues when it comes to legals. It's always best to find out these things beforehand. We can give that to a solicitor, see if it's a real problem or something that can be worked through. So that's one thing to have a look at. The special conditions are another document that you need to read really closely. That will tell you your timescales. It's a really important part of that document. So usually, but I would never assume anything, usually you'll get 21 working days to complete on the property, and then you'll have 10 days, what we call right to complete, which happens after the end date. So if you go into the 10 days right to complete, there is a charge. Sometimes it's a flat fee, sometimes it's daily interest, sometimes it's both. But yeah, you'd have to pay that, but it does mean that we have got 6 weeks to complete rather than 4 if something goes wrong. Obviously we'll always try and get it done in 4 weeks, but it does give us a bit of leeway. I've seen a couple of auctions recently where the terms are 14 days with no right to complete afterwards. That is, unless you're going to go to a lender that can do an automated valuation, we can get an offer really quickly, and you've got a solicitor who can act super fast. That's going to be a tricky one to do. So always check that. What you don't want to do is buy a property and then realise that you've got less time than you thought to get it completed. So that's something else to look at. Tenancy agreements or any leases in place is another thing that you will often find on the auction pack. I would really recommend obviously go and see the property. I think that's a given. If the property is tenanted, then I would have a chat if you can with the tenants when you go and see the property and see what it looks like. What are those tenants' thoughts in terms of, are they happy to leave? Will you be buying it vacant? Will they still be there? Are they paying rent? Are they looking after the house? Is that going to stop you from doing any works to that you're looking to do? So just kind of gauge things from any conversation that you're able to have. If there is a lease in place or tenancies that aren't right, then that could have a legal implication. So that's something to check with the solicitor. If there is a longer lease in place that may be on the land registry, or if it's less than 7 years, it would just sit separately. But if that lease is in place, then that's something to check with your broker, because a lot of mortgage lenders don't like a long lease in place. So just make sure that that's something that's mortgageable when you come to refinance. There are lots of other documents that are on the legal pack as well. So they may or may not be there. Different properties have got different sorts of documents on there, so I would always recommend reading through everything that you've got on there, because they will all piece together clues as to why that house has ended up at auction. There's always a reason. People don't choose to sell their house or property at auction for no good reason. So it's really important to try and find out what that reason is, and generally it's not the condition of the house or the property itself. There is normally something else sitting behind the scenes. If you're ever unsure about anything and you want a second opinion, obviously I'm not a solicitor, but I do see a lot of auction packs, and there may be some things on there that I could spot as being a potential issue. So if you want to use us and you want me to have a look at an auction pack before you go to the auction, I am more than happy to have a look at that for you. And the other thing I would say is just free available resources for you. You can look at previous sale prices on Zoopla or on Rightmove, see what this house has sold for previously, where does the estimated value sit in terms of what Zoopla and Rightmove think it's worth. It's a good kind of sense check. The other thing you can do is have a look obviously on Google Maps, have a look around before you go and visit the property, see if there's anything around there that could present a problem, any commercial properties, any other things that are in the vicinity that could present a problem from a mortgage point of view, and use Companies House. It's a free resource. Any limited company owned property you should be able to find on Companies House. You can look at what charges that company's got, what other things that they own, any sort of companies that go into liquidation, any issues on there you'll be able to see, and then if you can find the person that sits behind that company, you can then look at all the other companies that that person owns shareholding in, and you can see what other interests they have, how they're maintaining those companies. You could just doing some investigative work around how that all sits is really helpful to kind of build a picture as to who's selling this property, how easy is it going to be to purchase it. So yeah, there's a lot of research that needs to go into that. I think that sometimes people underestimate these things. They take things at face value, they'll go and have a look at it and say, well, do you know, it looks okay, I've got the funds to do the works that need to be done, and don't look at all the other things around the edges. I hope that's been useful. If you haven't already, then please give this video a like, give us a follow, and I look forward to seeing you again for our next video next time.